I don't know if you heard about it. It's a tiny little book. It's not a Jewish book. And it talks about the power of positive thinking. Maybe it could be a bit of an exaggeration, it's hype. But basically it's on target, it's correct. One of the contributors in the book, his name is John Assaraf. Turns out he's Jewish. And he wrote a follow-up book on The Secret. So a couple of months ago, near San Diego, there was a program, the Shluchah made, that was called The Torah and the Secret. And he spoke and basically said like this. He said, when you think positive, your thoughts have a very positive and powerful effect. So he creates like a visual board. You hang it up on the wall, and you put all your positive thoughts on the board. He has a book about it, how you do this. Now he says that he moved from Chicago to this very expensive house in outside of San Diego, and he was unpacking. And one of the things he unpacked was his visual board. And he realized that while living in Chicago many years earlier, he had created a board of what he sees his future to be. One of the things that he hung up on the board is a picture of a house that he cut out of a magazine. This is the kind of house he envisions for his own future. As he was unpacking it and he saw the house that he had clipped out of a magazine, he realized that he had just moved into that house. Not a house like it, that house. I don't know if I believe him. But it was very dramatic. So he explained, how does it work? How does it work that your thoughts can affect gashmias, can affect physical reality? So he went into a whole thing, according to science, the whole world, even a physical object, is not a fixed and permanent thing. It's all fluid. Even the laws of nature, they're all fluid. So since everything is always moving, everything is always in movement, your thoughts can move it in one direction or another, so your thinking has an effect even on physical reality. And he explained the whole theory of the principle of uncertainty in science, that since the atoms are made up of movable parts, and the electrons are always running around and jumping away, and so you never know where the building blocks of a physical thing, where they're going and what they're going to do a minute from now. And that's why it's possible for your thoughts to actually change reality. It's all pretty sophisticated stuff, and people were very impressed. He is a high-powered speaker. He's one of these great motivational, he speaks, gets $25,000 for a speech. This is the big time. Where is this in Torah? Where do we see this in the Torah? So I wanted to deliver it, explain it in the most simple for people who don't know what Torah is. why are your words or your thoughts so powerful? So when he finished speaking, I mentioned that right at the beginning of the Torah, we are given the same secret. So it hasn't been a secret for at least 3,000 years. The secret is God created the world how? By saying. He said. What happened on Shabbos? Vayonach bayom hashvi. So what happened on Shabbos? He still has to create the world or it wouldn't exist. But it's Shabbos. So what happens on Shabbos is that he creates the world not with dibur, but with machshava. So during the week, the world is created with words. On Shabbos, the world is created with thought. That's why Shabbos is holier than the rest of the week, because thought is higher than dibur. Behind it all, what brings the world into existence? Kol asher chofetz Hashem osa. By the fact that the Eibishter wants it, that makes it happen. So now we have three things. The word, the thought, and the rotzen. The Eibishter wants, it happens. That's why when you think or speak or even want, you're affecting the whole world. Because the whole world, the Eilam Hagashmi, is a response to words, thoughts, and rotzen. Now in the book, The Secret, which basically tells you stuff that you already know, only it exaggerates it a little, there's one interesting statement, which was surprising to find it in a secular book. They discovered that thinking is very powerful, but positive thoughts are more powerful than negative thoughts, which is really interesting. They don't explain it. They don't have an explanation. But they notice that this is true. Machshava is very powerful, but positive machshava is more powerful than negative machshava. Why is that? The explanation in Torah is very simple. The whole world is vibrating in response to the Eibishter's word. If you say a positive word, your energy, your word, now joins the Eibishter's word and adds an impact. If you say something negative, it has an effect, but it's just your word. It's not joining the Eibishter's word, so it can't have as much of an effect. When you have a positive machshava, then you're thinking in the same path, in the same line as the Eibishter is thinking. So obviously your machshava is going to have a bigger impact. If your rotzen is the same that the Eibishter wants, then of course your rotzen is going to be more powerful. So that explains everything. It explains why your thought can have an effect. How? And it explains why a positive effect is stronger than a negative effect. So when we say Tracht gut wird Zein gut, what is Tracht gut? What's good? If you think, for example, whatever the Eibishter wants is fine with me, is that called Tracht gut? It's not. Why is that not good? Sounds good. Whatever kol asher asa HaKadosh Baruch Hu is fine with me. That's not good. That's good emunah. That's not good getracht. Tracht gut means think what he's thinking. Don't just say whatever he's thinking is fine. So tracht gut means think what he's thinking. Want what he wants. How do you know what he wants? Since the Eibishter is etzem hatoiv, and einei mevakesh elo lefi koicham, since the Eibishter wants to do good, and he does good according to your understanding. So if you're thinking, I am sure that I'm going to be well or that my child is going to be cured, that's what the Eibishter is thinking. So when your machshava matches his machshava, it brings that machshava down to earth, and it actually happens begashmias. The Rebbe once told somebody by dollars, he had just been a sandik at a bris. So the Rebbe said to him, you know that when you're a sandik, it's a sgula to ashiris. So the man said, yeah, he knows. So the Rebbe said, but it has to be gashmias dika ashiris, because ashiris can come in many forms. You have to demand that it should be pushed in dollars. Dollars are not worth anything, in gold. Otherwise, it can come down in nachas. You can have ashiris and seichel, in yira shamayim. Make sure that you tell the Eibishter that the ashiris you want is in cash. In other words, the machshava that the Eibishter has, that he wants you to be rich, that's a machshava l'mayla. When you add your machshava, and you mean cash, cold cash, that makes the Eibishter's machshava come down b'gashmias mamish. Otherwise, it could be a little ruchniistic. That is the positive effect of Tracht gut with Zein gut. There was a little boy, maybe you know the story, you even know who it was. There was a little boy who was by a Fabrengen, and I don't know if you heard about this, but there was a time when little kids, little boys, would climb under the table where the Rebbe was sitting, and they would sit under the table for the whole Fabrengen. One time the Rebbe looked down, and there was a little boy there under the table, and the Rebbe told him to say l'chaim. He was maybe 10 years old. I think it was a Pesach Fabrengen. He said l'chaim, and by the next sicha, by the next nigun, the Rebbe told him to say l'chaim again. It was very surprising. I mean, it's illegal to give a wine or a drink. Anyway, his father had a heart attack, and months later, he came to a Fabrengen for the first time after the heart attack, and he went over to the Rebbe, and he said, last week I started to feel better. So the Rebbe said, no, you started to feel better when your son said l'chaim. A positive thing, a positive thought, l'chaim, has an effect. One time the Frierdiker Rebbe was speaking about the power of machshava. And he was saying that we should think about the Yidden in Russia, because machshava me'eles. Machshava helps. So somebody sitting by the Fabrengen said, I don't understand. By the Frierdiker Rebbe, you could argue. He said, I don't understand. Where do you see that machshava works? So the Rebbe looked at him and said, where were you last year? He was in Russia. And the Rebbe's machshava brought him out of Russia. Now let's take a look at an interesting Gemara. Fascinating Gemara. The Gemara says that if you're going on a trip overseas, and you're a little nervous, and you want to know whether you're going to come back successful or come back at all, whatever. You want to know if it's going to be a successful trip. Here's what you do. Go into a dark room and look at the shadow that you create. If it's a single shadow, it's not so good. If it's a double shadow, something you have a darker shadow and then a lighter. If you have a double shadow, it means you're going to be great. And that is a reliable test. However, the Gemara says, don't do it. Why? Because if you go into the dark room and you take a look at your shadow and there's only one, you're going to become discouraged and you're going to think negative and it's going to ruin your Mazal. So here we see from Gemara that Tracht good, that Zein good. Because if you think negative, it's negative. So let's understand a little bit what that means. What does Mazal mean? What does it mean, Mazal Tov? Mazole Govar. What does it mean? There's a part of the neshama that is in the body. Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama. There's a part of the neshama that is not in the body. It's bigger, too big, and that's Chaya Yechida. The keiches, the ability, the strength that you have inside the body from your nefesh, ruach, neshama is limited. The koyach that you can get from chaya yechida, that's endless. But the chaya yechida is not in your body. You don't always have it. So what happens is that the effect of the chaya yechida trickles down and has some influence on the rest of the neshama. So l'moshel, sometimes you feel more inspired than usual. What happened? A little bit of the chaya yechida is affecting your regular neshama standards. In those cases where a person can pick up a truck with his bare hands because a child is trapped underneath. Where is that coming from? Chaya Yechida. A person suddenly does tshuva. They suddenly move to do tshuva. Where is it coming from? The Chaya Yechida never wanted to do the Aved in the first place, and when it influences, somehow it finds an opening and it can influence your nefesh, ruach, neshama, you will do tshuva. So mazal means, it comes from the word running or trickling, dripping. The chaya yechida trickles into your neshama, into your nefesh, ruach, neshama. That's called mazal. Sometimes there's more, sometimes there's less. So on your birthday, for example, then your mazal is strong. What does it mean your mazal is strong? Your chaya yechida is closer to your nefesh, ruach, neshama than usual. And that's why you can make hachlotas that will be successful. That's why you can give brachas that will be effective, because you now have the energy of your mazal. It's because there are two parts, chaya and yechida. That's why we wear two hats, a yarmulke and a hat. Because the yarmulke is to remember that there's something above you. What is above you? The part of the neshama that doesn't fit into the body. Well, the part of the neshama that doesn't fit into the body actually has two parts. So that's why we wear a hat and it's called Shnei Makifin. When you have two hats, you're wearing two Makifin, because Chaya and Yechida are both Makif, they're both bigger than you, and have a trickle-down effect. Now, obviously, Yechida is more powerful than Chaya. So, if a person walks into a dark room and he takes a look at the shadow, he sees a double shadow. That means Chaya and Yechida. When you see both shadows, it means that you will have an influence not only from Chaya, but also from Yechida. So you are guaranteed that it's going to be wonderful. If you see only one shadow, it means that your Mazal is coming from Chaya, but not Yechida. Which is good. It's Mazal. But it's not the highest Mazal. So what happens if you go and you see only one shadow, you will still have Mazal, but not the most Mazal. But that will discourage you, and you'll start thinking negative, and that will ruin your Mazal. What will it ruin? The Chaya. So then you'll end up without Yechida, and even without the Chaya. So it's better not to do it. So what does Tracht gut mean? Tracht gut means don't close the door to the possibilities that your Chaya and Yechida can produce. Which also means don't ruin your Mazal. What does Al Tiftach Pele Satan mean? Don't open the door to negative Mazal. We'll get to questions. Okay, what does that actually mean in everyday life? How do you apply this to your family, to your home? Tracht gut means keep the door open to the part of your neshama that is better than you. In a marriage, in a family, it means keep your awareness. Don't forget that your husband has Chaya Yechida that makes him better than he is. If you keep that door open, you help his Mazal. You help his Chaya Yechida have a greater effect on him than it is having. If you think negative, you're closing that door. But it's not just thinking. It's also speaking, and it's also wanting. There are three things that have an effect on reality. Your words, your thoughts, and your ratzon. Your ratzon puts you where you want to be. Your machshava brings what you want into reality. And your dibur makes it completely gashmius. So there are these three steps. What do you want your husband to be? You know, sometimes a woman complains, why can't my husband be a little more frum? Why isn't he more studious? Why isn't he more serious? And I wonder, if you're living with him and you are his wife, and this is what you want him to be, and you've been married for 11 years, how is it that you haven't made him into what you want? You keep saying you want him to be, so make him already. You know how to do that. So sometimes I get a little suspicious. You really want him to be more frum, or You want to be a little more, not too much more. Okay, so we get it. You want it to be a little more serious. No, not too serious. Or the other way, you want them to relax and just have some fun. Well, not too much. If you want it, it makes it happen. What you really want your husband to be, wanting it makes it happen. To some degree. Of course, if you really want it. Then, if you think it, then what you want him to be starts to show in the world, in his behavior, in his personality. When you speak it, of it, that makes it happen begashmis. In very simple language, you want your home to be a certain way. Check to make sure that your words match what you want it to be. Because you may want the right thing, but you say the wrong thing, and then you're frustrated. Because your words destroy what your Ratzon created. Sometimes it's not your words, sometimes it's just the tone of your words, the nigun. Sometimes it's not the nigun, it's the machshava. You want him to be a certain way, but in your own mind you're thinking, nah, it'll never happen. So your thought is canceling your Ratzon. So Tracht gut doesn't begin in machshava, it begins in Ratzon. And it doesn't end in machshava, it ends in dibur. Certainly, good words don't begin in words, it begins in machshava. And the machshava begins in Ratzon. So when you want, and you think, and you say the same thing, of course you're going to succeed. It has to happen. Somebody wants to ask me, Snagid, asked me, we're working very hard on putting a stop to Lashon Hara. How come you don't do anything about Lashon Hara? No. I said, because then we wouldn't be able to talk about you behind your back. I have a few things to say about you behind your back. What do we do about Lashon Hara? What is our line concerning Lashon Hara? You know what it is? Ahavas Yisrael. Ahavas Yisrael. Not speaking Lashon Hara doesn't begin in your mouth. What if you don't say any Lashon Hara, but you're thinking it? So that makes you a tzaddik? You walk around with negative thoughts, critical thoughts, but you're not going to say it because you're frum. Even worse. Let's say you don't say any Lashon Hara and you don't think any Lashon Hara, but there are certain people you hope they do something bad. You want them to be bad. That's even worse. So, what is the cure for Lashon Hara? The cure is Avas Yisrael. If you like a Jew, you're not going to think anything negative. You won't have anything negative to say, so you won't say it, and you won't have to bite your tongue, which hurts. So, Tracht gut means speaking positive means your words are in harmony with your machshava. Assuming that your machshava is good. Tracht gut means make sure that your machshava is in harmony with your ratzon. assuming that what you want is good. Now, what does it say about Ratzon? Batel Ratzoncha mipnei Ratzonai. If your Ratzon is what his Ratzon is, and that becomes your machshava, and then you say it, that's very effective. So you have to check. Where is my weak spot? Where is the weak link? Is it my rotzen that is not on target? Is it my machshava, or is it my dibur? Same is true with children. What do you want your child to be? Sometimes a parent hopes that the child will do something bad. Not because they want their child to be bad. They want their child to do something bad so they can catch them doing it and discipline them and make them good, which is a ridiculous plan. But that rotzen is not a healthy one. What do you want for your child? What you want from your child, you have to make your machshava. That's how you have to think of the child. I want my child to be good, but I don't think he is. Well, then you're damaging the whole plan. What you expect of your child means you're thinking that he will be what you want him to be. Expectation is not just rotzen. You want him to be good, and you expect him to be good. That means tracht good. Expecting is in the machshava. So if you expect the child to be what you want him to be, now your rotzen and machshava are lined up. Once you decide what you expect your child to be, then speak to him as if he were that. Because if you talk to him in a way that is not consistent with your own expectation, you're making everybody crazy. You're confusing the child, you're confusing yourself. Same is true for yourself. You know what you want to be. You have to think, tracht, good. Good means that what you want is going to be. And then speak that way. Don't say things, don't use words that compromise your own expectation. It's really amazing. They should give out a book, and I'm sure someday they will. All the corrections that the Rebbe made on articles, letters, and so on, that people wrote and had the Rebbe be Magia, the corrections that Rebbe made. It's amazing. The Rebbe did not like the word undertaking. It suggested something negative. Undertaking. Don't use that word. The Rebbe said not to use the word taboo. Taboo. Took a long time to figure out why. Taboo is actually a word that comes from the voodoo religion. Of course, you have to be a Lubavitcher Rebbe to know that. The care in choosing the right word, even in such subtle, who knows that it has to do with the voodoo religion? Nobody knows that, but it does. No, who thinks that undertaking is related to undertaker? But it does. The first lesson from that, by the way, the first lesson is, if you're going to use a language, use it on your terms. You don't give in to it. As b'chlal, how do you handle the world? You handle the world, use everything that's there on your terms, not on its terms. You want to speak English? Gesundheit. Make the English say what you want to say. Don't become a slave to it. But secondly, the power of the word. So sometimes you mean well, you're thinking right, and then you use a word that contradicts it. Like, for example, if you write, this group has undertaken the mission of saving lives. Good intention, wrong word. I'm dying to be your friend. Not a good expression. So sometimes you ruin the best intentions with the best expectations simply because you use words that are not life-giving. So, when it says in Tanya that a Beinoni can't really be perfect in his emotions, in his seichel. A Beinoni can be perfect in his machshava, dibur, and maaseh. So if you want to be a better person, how do you start? You can become a hippie and go and look for the real you. And you can look, and you can look, and you can look. You want to be a better person? Machshava, dibur, and maaseh. If you're a better thinker, you're a better person. If you're a better talker, you're a better person. If you're a better doer, you're a better person. Yeah, but what about my kavanah? That part of the neshama is your mazal. Fix what you can control, and the mazal will come down. Tracht good, then the mazal will have more of an effect. Speak good, the mazal will have more of an effect. Do good, and the mazal will have more of an effect. So if you want to make your life better, meaning your marriage, your relationship, your family, your home, and your children, there is no mystery that you have to figure out. Tracht good, which means machshava, dibur, and maaseh. Particularly, knowing that the Rebbe said that he is taking responsibility for our children when we go on shlichus. Does that mean that we have no responsibility? Does that mean that we can neglect our children because the Rebbe is taking care of them? The Rebbe said, I'm taking it on my achrayus means, I will give you the mazal. But if you close the door, so the mazal is already there because you're on shlichus. The keiches makifin, the strong, infinite, endless keiches that the Rebbe offers, is there and available. But you have to open the door. Open the door. So, Tracht gut. Is your husband perfect in your thinking? If he's not, then you're not thinking right. In your thinking, he has to be perfect. He has to be exactly what you want and need, so that you make it possible for him to be exactly what you want and need. Tracht gut. At least moments, at least occasions, where you can sit and think about your husband, and in your thought and in your mind's eye, he looks perfect. You think that if you notice how imperfect he is, it will help make him perfect. No. If he thinks how imperfect he is, that will help him become perfect. But your job is to see him as perfect. Same thing is true with the children. You may have all sorts of worries. You may have all sorts of legitimate disappointments. Your children are not what they should be. But there have to be at least moments where you look at your children and they are perfect. Tracht gut. Just to make it very graphic, when Mashiach comes and you introduce your children to the Rebbe, never mind the fact that when Mashiach comes, your children will be perfect. If they don't change, if you introduce your children to the Rebbe, are you going to be ashamed or are you going to be comfortable? Will you cringe? Will you apologize? Rebbe, these are my children, I'm sorry. If you did that, the Rebbe would be so angry at you. But he's not really a Chassidish Bacher, and she's not so this, and he's not so that, and you know, it's... You introduce your children to the Rebbe. You say to the Rebbe, these children are your shluchim, they were born on shlichus. These children are your children, they were born in your kehillah. They went to your yeshiva. They're your children, and I will not apologize for them. That's what the Rebbe wants to hear. And if you could remind yourself from time to time that that is true, then the Tracht gut et werden gut. This is not a question of emunah. This is avodah. You can have emunah. It'll all be good. In the end, it'll all be good. Everything will be good. That's good. That's emunah. Avodah means make it good. How can you make it good? Tracht gut, wird Zein gut. You can have the effect, not just hope for the best. Of course, you have to have emunah that your words will have an effect. But that's always the case. You have to do your best and believe that when you do your best, it will have an effect. So, let's start trachting good. In those areas where it's hardest. Where is it hardest to tracht good? About your children. Because they're so bad. And they're your children. So it's very easy to look at somebody else's kid and say, nah, he's a good kid, leave him alone, he's fine. Yeah, but my own kid. Let me tell you the negative side. Somebody asked me, is Judaism any better than Taliban? Are Orthodox Jews any different? Because you take a look in the Chumash. Yeah. If you follow what it says in the Chumash, you'd be killing somebody every day. For this you die, for that you get killed, for this you get stoned, for this you get... Who would be alive? So I said, let me use an example. The Torah says that if you have a son who doesn't listen to you and eats a lot, kill him. That's what it says. You bring him to Bezdin and you say, this is our son, he doesn't listen and he eats too much, and have him stoned to death. Sounds a little like Taliban. Lahavdil. So people say, well, you see, in those days, this is Torah, not in those days. Torah says that this is what you do. So, yeah, it sounds like we could be pretty much like, if we had a Bezdin, bad news. Actually, it's the opposite. Torah is Torah's chesed. If parents don't like their child and think that the child needs to be killed, he's that bad, he needs to be killed. What does the Torah say? The Torah says that if parents find that their child is so bad that he needs to be killed, bring him to Bezdin, which means you can't kill him. Bring him to Bezdin and convince a board of judges that this 13-year-old kid needs to die. Good luck. And that's why it never happened. No Ben Seira Umeira was ever killed. Why? Because you think a group of judges are going to want to kill a 13-year-old? The mother wants to kill him. That makes sense. But not a Bezdin. Now, somebody can say, so why do you have to have this whole thing take him to Bezdin? Why don't you just say, no 13-year-old should ever be killed? Because that wouldn't convince parents. Almost every parent will say, yeah, but my kid he's much worse. My kid is an exception. He has to die. So in order to satisfy the parent, you have to say, you know what? Could be you're right. Could be. Your kid may be that bad. So let's check it out. Bring him to Bezdin and let's see. Parents can be devastating to their children because they care too much, because they care a lot. And it doesn't necessarily mean killing like Taliban, but there are many ways in which we can destroy a child because we think he's bad. Which, of course, makes no sense. You think he's bad, it bothers you very much, so you make him worse? That doesn't make any sense. So, even if a child seems to be so disappointing and so bad and so wrong and so off base, the Mazal is always good. Tracht good, open the door to the Mazal, and he will be good. So if that connection hasn't yet happened, okay, so it's going to happen soon. So if you bring your child to the Rebbe and say, this is my child, you have nothing to be ashamed of. You have nothing to apologize for. You're not allowed to apologize. And one final thought. If we fix the world, Fatzas Mayones, everybody does tshuva, the buttons are all polished, everything is done, so Mashiach can come already. But then if everything is done, why do you need Mashiach? Then what's Mashiach going to do? Sounds like a contradiction. Make the world good, and then Mashiach will come and make it good. Our job is to bring the Rebbe healthy, good children. The Rebbe's job is to make them into Chassidim. I mean, what does a Rebbe do? A Rebbe makes Chassidim. Our job is to bring a healthy, good child to Mashiach and let Mashiach make him Mashiach. We don't have to do the entire job. We have to do what a parent does. What do parents do? You make a healthy, happy child and you give him to the Rebbe. And the Rebbe makes him into a chassid. So when you bring your children to the Rebbe and they're not big chassidim, that's fine. The Rebbe will make them chassidim. So all you have to do is bring your children to the Rebbe. And they are perfect. They're exactly what the Rebbe wants. They're exactly what the Rebbe needs. And then he will make them his chassidim. Tracht gut. It's not always easy. Torah says sometimes parents want to kill their kids. So it must be true. It's not always easy, but you have to do it, at least sometimes. At least sometimes you have to fall asleep thinking, my children are absolutely delightful. And I have no apologies, and I am not ashamed to introduce them to the Rebbe. Got to do that. The result will be that you will feel better, they will feel better, and their Mazal will start to shine. Because you open the door to their Mazal. Do we have time yet? Yeah? Any questions? Yeah. The question is, if wearing the two hats represents the makifim, why don't women have to wear two hats? First of all, don't raise that question in public because you never know what's going to happen. So you're going to be wearing a hat on top of your sheitel like some people do. A woman's Mazal is expressed not only in what she wears on her head, but in everything she wears. Because all levushim are makifim. So tznius for a woman is a yarmulke for a man. Yeah. I didn't hear. What? The net? The net of the sheitel. Uh-huh. Okay. The sheitel is made up of two layers, so it's your two makifim. I always thought that the same is true with a yarmulke because it has the cotton underneath and the... Yeah? If a husband thinks that he's no good, that's good. So how does a person think positive about himself? When you know you're not good, that is very positive. Not to the extreme. Yeah. Thinking that you're not good to the extreme is too arrogant. It's like a person says, I'm the worst in my class. Don't be so arrogant. There are worse people than you. A little humility, okay? Right. I have a problem nobody can understand. Come on, you're just a person like everybody else. Don't be so arrogant. So yeah, if you make it an extreme, it's coming from gaiva, not from bittul. It's the exact opposite. Now, if a person can recognize and admit to himself that he has a fault, that's tracht gut. Yeah. Here it doesn't apply. If a man thinks that he's not perfect and knows that he has faults and he tells his wife about it, that's very bad. Because she'll believe him. And then he's ruined everything. So if your husband actually tells you, I am such a loser, I'm such a Mazal, I'm so stupid, don't hear it. It's good for him, it's not good for you. Don't hear it. Say, go tell it to your mashpia. I don't understand what you're saying. So, there's a difference. Tracht gut means and applies to things you can't otherwise control. It's not in your bechira. If it's something that is in your bechira, what do you mean tracht gut? Go fix it. Don't just think positive and be optimistic. Go fix it. Tracht gut means concerning something you can't control. If a person sees a chesaron in himself, what do you mean tracht gut? Fix it. That's your bechira. That's your avodah. So a person says, I'm really bad, but I'm confident that someday I'll be good. That's not ishkeit. Don't be confident. Fix it. If it's somebody else, it's not your bechira, then the way that you can help is by tracht gut. Make sense? Tracht gut about yourself only applies to things you can't control, like, for example, if a person is not feeling well, has to go to a doctor, an operation, God forbid, tracht gut that the operation will be, because you can't do it, you can't make it. So anything that is out of your control, not your bechira, there tracht gut applies. Huh? Out of the realm of Maisa HaMitzvahs. Even getting a job done. You have no bechira. Hatzlacha comes mumayla. So you do a job and you're not sure it's going to be effective or it's going to work. Tracht gut. But if it comes to Yiddishkeit, to right and wrong, here you have full bechira. Don't tracht gut, be good. Is it foolproof? No. 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 That's part of the problem with this book, The Secret. It makes it sound like it is absolutely guaranteed that if you think you're going to get that house, next thing you know, you're living in that house. No. Obviously, that's not true. But the question is like this. Rambam says, for example, if you live by the rules that I'm giving you, you'll never get sick. Really? Never get sick? That's a pretty ambitious statement. What it means is, if you live this way, you will never do anything that will make you sick. Is it possible you'll get sick for some other mysterious reason? It's God's world. What can I do? No. So, Tracht gut wird Zein gut means the law of nature says that if you tracht good, things come out good. Can the Eibishter disagree? He can do whatever he wants. So if there is some deep kavanah for which you need to go through a negative experience, then of course nothing is going to help. So we're talking Tracht gut wird Zein gut is a law in nature, not a promise min hashamayim. So it's like saying if you don't smoke, you won't get cancer. Really? No, not really. But smoking is not a good thing. So, if you exercise, you'll be healthy. Nobody ever died exercising? So of course the Eibishter will do what the Eibishter does. That's emunah. So when that happens, you're trachting good, but it doesn't turn out good. Well, then you switch to emunah. Then you say, look, if the Eibishter is doing it, it's probably the best thing. So, Tracht gut wird Zein gut is not a mystical, magical, it's teva. It's the healthy way to make things happen. Can you change God's plan? No, of course not. Of course not. So when it says, for example, it says, the silly expression, Mensch tracht und Gott lacht. Rabbeis machshoves belev ish, atzas Hashem hisoko. What are these Rabbeis machshoves? Bad machshoves? No, good machshoves. Mensch tracht, Rabbeis machshoves, tracht good. But in the end, atzas Hashem hisoko. Which is also good news. As good as you can make it with your trachting good, the Eibishter can make it better. But then it might be a little painful. Make sense? So if it doesn't work out when you tracht good, that means that something gooder is happening. Something good that your machshava can't produce. No matter how good your machshava is. But then it's emunah. Kol ma d'ovid rachmano l'tav ovid. So basically you can't lose. Either you tracht good and it will be good, or it'll be better. So then the question is, why bother trachting good? Just let it be better. Fine, if you're on that madrega, where it's fine with you, whatever the Eibishter does, good, you're perfect. We're not all on that madrega. So we don't want whatever. We want what we think we need. So tracht good, and you'll get good, not better. Sometimes you don't want better, you just want good. It's like in halacha, if a woman says, I agree to marry you on the grounds that you have enough to live on. Turns out that he's a millionaire. Are they married or not? Huh? A woman says, I agree to marry you on the condition that you're a Beinani. Turns out he's a tzaddik. So you would think, well, I mean, that's even better. So of course they're married. They're not. It's a mekach to'us. I want to be married to a Beinani. I don't want a tzaddik. I don't want a millionaire. I just want what to eat. Say, but that's even more. Yes, sometimes I don't want more. Who says it's always better to have more? So, although the Eibishter will give you something even better, doesn't mean that that's what you want. Unless you're on that madrege where whatever the Eibishter wants is fine with you. If you're not on that madrege, then Tracht good with Zein good. I'm going to just end with one little thing I heard just very recently. There was a man who became very close to the Rebbe. Did many shlichusim for the Rebbe and so on. And one time he came to a Fabrengen. He was not from Neville, and he was not used to the pushing or to the drinking or to the Wildkeit. He was a very dignified human being. But he came to a Fabrengen, and the Rebbe told him to say L'chaim. So he said L'chaim. Then the Rebbe told him to say L'chaim a second time. So he said L'chaim a second time. And then the Rebbe noticed that he left the Fabrengen. The next night was Yechidus for all the guests, so he went into Yechidus. So the Rebbe said to him, I noticed that you left the Fabrengen. Did I make you uncomfortable by telling you to say L'chaim? So this man said, nothing the Rebbe will ever tell me will make me uncomfortable. I went over to him afterwards and I said, you know, you don't necessarily have to learn in 770 to be a real chassid. Nothing the Rebbe tells me can possibly make me uncomfortable. So if you're on that madrege, then don't bother trachting good. If you're not on that madrege, then tracht good, then Zein good.